My name is Mike Walsh and the leadership facilitator here at Berkeley. There's a difference between having a dialogue with someone, which is about seeking to understand, versus a discussion, which is really about advocating for a point, or here is what I need you to understand. Students can start to understand the difference between the two and recognize that both have a purpose, and just understanding when to use the purpose does a lot to further their ability just to listen and really make sense out of what they're hearing, so that they can separate themselves from their own opinions for just long enough to understand what somebody is talking about. So in the second half of the conversation around dialogue and discussion, what we do is use a program, an activity rather, that's known as the bomb shelter. And it's really an opportunity for students to figure out what happens when we're working towards consensus, whether or not dialogue is still an important tool, and why all of a sudden things kind of change when they're really working on how do they come to agreement on something. It's really easy to dialogue when I do my first set of choices for the bomb shelter, who I am choosing to keep in the shelter. And what happens is when I create this artificial pressure, 10 minutes to have 12 people come to a consensus, the scarcity takes over and my personality also starts to take over, and the difficulty in controlling that. And it starts to mirror some of the things that we see on a national discourse, where there's a lot of voices that are really trying to figure out how do we move together. So for me, the challenge is to help them recognize that this is more than just about listening. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for the kids to recognize their natural self, which is not right, wrong, good or bad. It's just an assessment of where I am now with that skill, those soft skills, and what I can do to become even better at that.
I'm Cole, I'm from Marin County, which is just by San Francisco. I thought it was a really cool activity. It was basically how groups of people come to consensus and how you interact, and if you're a leader, what mistakes you make, because obviously you're gonna make mistakes. My goal is like make people laugh, so like I stand up, make jokes, trying to be in charge so I can make it funny, because like I feel like it's hard to reach an actual point. There's so many constraints. What I think we've learned is like dialogue seems to be the best form of, conversation, where people get their points out, people agree, it's not discussion, which is like aggressive. My point is right.
Joseph from Los Angeles, California. It was interesting. I had a very complete different list at the beginning of who I wanted to live and who I thought of dying. And then as I worked with the partner, that changed, and then when we worked in a group, that changed it more. But as I got into the group, I started getting up and I began to lead the group into the direction that we wanted to. It got very messy, so I was like, oh, okay. I like being organized, so I stood up and I told everyone, okay, quiet down. I raised up my voice. I have a pretty loud voice. Don't be afraid, or personally, don't be afraid to stand up. And it works to take charge. It doesn't hurt you.